1984 is a haunting and powerful dystopian novel set in a future where totalitarianism has taken absolute control. In the world of Oceania, every thought, action, and word is monitored by the ever-watchful eye of Big Brother. Individual freedom is crushed, history is rewritten, and truth itself becomes a matter of state control. At the center of the story is Winston Smith, a quiet rebel who begins to question the oppressive system and dreams of freedom and truth. His quiet acts of defiance and longing for love put him on a dangerous path, one that explores the terrifying consequences of surveillance, censorship, and the loss of individuality. About the author, George Orwell, born Eric Arthur Blair in 1903, was an English novelist, journalist, and critic best known for his works that explore themes of social injustice, authoritarianism, and political truth. Drawing from his experiences in colonial Burma, fighting in the Spanish Civil War, and observing the rise of fascism and communism, Orwell became a fierce advocate for democratic socialism and individual freedom. His sharp insight into power and propaganda led to timeless works like Animal Farm in 1984, which remain deeply relevant today. Orwell's writing continues to challenge readers to question authority and defend the truth. It was a cold and colorless day in the city of Airstrip 1, once known as London. The wind blew dust along the gray streets, and giant posters loomed on every wall. Stern faces with dark eyes watched from above, and below them the words, "Big Brother is watching you." In this world, the past had been erased, the future was uncertain, and the present was tightly controlled by a powerful and silent force. This was the world Winston Smith lived in. Winston wasn't particularly strong or bold, but somewhere inside he felt something wasn't right. He worked in the Ministry of Truth, a towering building that stretched into the smoggy sky. His job was to rewrite old news articles so they matched whatever the ruling party said was true. If the party said they'd always been at war with a certain country, then Winston made sure the records showed just that even if they'd been allies the day before. The truth no longer mattered. What mattered was control. The party had created a language called Newspeak, which made it harder and harder for people to think for themselves. They even had a word for dangerous thoughts, thought crime, and anyone who committed it could vanish without a trace. The world Winston lived in was one of constant surveillance, where even your expressions could betray you. Telescreens were everywhere, inside homes, on streets, in offices watching, listening, always. And yet, in the quiet corners of his mind, Winston dared to doubt. He kept a secret diary, hidden in the corner of his small apartment, where the telescreen couldn't quite see. In it, he wrote the forbidden words, "Down with Big Brother." His hand had trembled when he wrote them, and he knew deep down that this small act could mean death. But for the first time he felt something that almost resembled freedom. He began to remember a time before the party, just flashes of it. A photograph, a song, a dream. Moments that felt too vivid to be fake. The party had erased so much, rewritten history so thoroughly, that even remembering your own childhood was an act of rebellion. Winston wondered if others felt the same, if anyone else saw through the lies. Then something unusual happened. A young woman from the fiction department, dark-haired, quiet, always seemingly obedient, began appearing near him more often. At first he was suspicious. Was she a spy? Was she watching him? But when she passed him one day and secretly handed him a note, everything changed. It said just 3 simple words: "I love you." Winston's heart pounded. Love was forbidden. Relationships not approved by the party were dangerous. Desire itself was seen as a weakness, but there it was hope wrapped in secrecy. And for the first time in a long time, Winston didn't feel completely alone. Winston didn't know what to do with the note at first. His hands trembled as he hid it in his pocket, and he avoided eye contact with the girl for days. If anyone saw them exchange so much as a glance, it could be the end. But something had awakened in him, something human and fierce. One day, when he saw her again in the cafeteria, he managed to whisper just enough to arrange a secret meeting. They met away from the city, beyond the prying telescreens, in the countryside where the air smelled of earth and grass. There, in a clearing hidden by trees, they came together not just in body, but in spirit. Her name was Julia. She wasn't interested in politics the way Winston was. She didn't care about grand rebellions or rewriting history. But she hated the party. She hated the control, the rules, the lies. And most of all, she hated how the party tried to take away simple joys, love, laughter, desire, even chocolate. They met in secret whenever they could, sometimes in abandoned churches or alleyways. Eventually, they found a small room above an old shop in a quiet district where no telescreens seemed to watch. It was dusty and worn, filled with forgotten things, a glass paperweight with coral inside, an old painting of a church, and a bed that creaked under their stolen moments of peace. It became their world, their fragile slice of freedom. There, Winston and Julia talked about the past, about the way things might have been before the party. They dreamed of running away, of growing old together, of waking up one morning in a world where Big Brother didn't exist. For a while, it almost felt possible. The man who owned the shop, Mr. Charrington, seemed kind and harmless, an old man with a quiet way about him. He let them use the room without questions. Winston never suspected anything more than what he saw, just a dusty shopkeeper, part of a fading world the party hadn't yet destroyed. As time passed, Winston's belief in the party's lies began to crumble. He grew bolder in his thoughts, surer in his hatred for the system. He started to believe that there might be others like him and Julia, people quietly resisting, waiting for the right moment to rise. He clung to the idea of a mysterious underground group called the Brotherhood, led by a man named Emmanuel Goldstein, whom the party called their greatest enemy. Then one day it seemed as though his hope might be real. A man named O'Brien, a powerful figure in the inner party, approached Winston. For a long time, Winston had suspected that O'Brien might be like him, someone who saw through the lies. And now O'Brien invited him to his home, something almost unthinkable for someone of Winston's low rank. Inside O'Brien's sleek apartment, hidden from telescreens and surrounded by silent servants, Winston felt a surge of something he hadn't known in years: trust. O'Brien poured real wine, and spoke openly of the Brotherhood. He gave Winston a book written by Goldstein himself that explained how the party stayed in power through war, manipulation, and fear. It all made sense now. The lies, the rewrites, the endless wars, they were never meant to be won or lost, only to keep the people obedient and afraid. Winston devoured the book, reading it aloud to Julia in their secret room. They imagined a world where truth mattered, where love wasn't forbidden. They believed for a fleeting moment that they might help bring that world to life. But all along the trap had already been set. It happened one night as quietly as a door closing. Winston and Julia were lying together in the small upstairs room, surrounded by the warm quiet of their dreams, when a voice echoed from behind the picture frame on the wall. A cold, mechanical voice. "You are the dead," it said. They froze. The painting had never just been a painting. Behind it, hidden all along, was a telescreen. The door burst open. Heavy boots thundered up the stairs. The room filled with black-clad soldiers. Julia screamed. Winston reached for her but was torn away. The coral paperweight fell and shattered on the floor. The dream was over. And Mr. Charrington? He was no gentle shopkeeper. He stepped into the room with his face cold and proud, now wearing the uniform of the thought police. He had been watching them the whole time. Winston was taken to the Ministry of Love, which was anything but loving. It was a place of white walls, bright lights, and endless waiting. Time slipped away inside. There were no clocks, no windows, no voices except those that questioned or accused. For days, maybe weeks, Winston was interrogated, beaten, starved, and broken. Then came O'Brien. He didn't come as a friend nor as a fellow rebel. He came as a master. The brotherhood, the book, the hope it had all been a lie. O'Brien was part of the trap. He hadn't come to punish Winston. He had come to change him. "You do not merely have to obey," O'Brien said calmly. "You have to love Big Brother." Winston wanted to resist. He wanted to believe there was still a place inside him that the party couldn't touch. But the torture was relentless. Electric shocks, beatings, sleeplessness. O'Brien tore apart every part of Winston's mind until Winston no longer knew what was real. If the party says 2 and 2 make 5, then it is 5, O'Brien said. And if Winston thought otherwise, that was proof he had not yet learned. Again and again they showed him how weak he was. They held him under water, made him scream in pain, twisted his thoughts until he began to doubt even his own memories. The goal was not to extract a confession. It was to erase the man and build something new in his place. Winston still held on to one last truth, his love for Julia. He hadn't betrayed her. He had not spoken her name. In his mind she was still his, still sacred, but O'Brien knew that too. He saved the worst for last, room 101. Winston didn't know what was in room 101, only that it was the most dreaded place in the ministry. Everyone feared it. Everyone whispered about it. It was where your deepest fear lived. When Winston was taken there, he found out what his own fear was. Rats, ... Strapped to a chair, he faced a wire cage filled with starving rats, positioned to be released onto his face. The panic took over his body. He screamed, sobbed, writhed. "Do it to Julia," he shouted. "Not me, Julia. I don't care what you do to her, just not me." And with that it was done. That was the moment he betrayed her. After room 101, there was no more need for chains or torture. Winston was free to walk the streets again, but he wasn't the same man. The fire inside him had gone out, replaced by a strange emptiness. He no longer felt anger toward the party or remembered why he ever believed in rebellion. The ideas that once stirred him so deeply now seemed like faded echoes of someone else's dream. He didn't care about the past anymore. He spent his days sitting at a cafe, drinking Victory gin, playing chess with himself and watching the telescreen. He had grown thin and pale, and his mind drifted like a leaf on water. Words that once had meaning, freedom, truth, love, no longer stirred anything inside him. One afternoon, in the chill of early spring, he saw her again. Julia. She had changed, too. Her body was different, scarred, tired, and her eyes no longer held that spark he remembered. They spoke briefly, awkwardly, like strangers. She told him she had betrayed him, and he admitted the same. They didn't touch, didn't smile. Whatever they had shared was gone. The party had destroyed even that. There had been a time when he thought love could be a weapon, that two people clinging to each other in defiance could shake the foundations of a cruel world. But now all of that seemed childish. He felt no sorrow, no longing, just a numb understanding that everything they had believed in was false. And so he returned to his usual corner at the cafe. He played with his chess pieces, listening to the announcer on the telescreen praising yet another glorious victory in the endless war. He nodded along, empty but obedient. As he watched the news, he felt a warmth rise in his chest, not from the gin or the fire beside him, but from something deeper. He looked up at the giant poster on the wall, the eyes, the slogan, "Big Brother is watching you." And then, like a final breath, the truth came to him, not a truth of logic or resistance, but one that had been carefully planted, nourished, and grown inside him. He loved Big Brother. Thanks for listening to this calm and thoughtful retelling of 1984. If you enjoyed the story, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more classic book summaries told in a peaceful, easy-to-understand way. Until next time, take care and keep imagining.